Welcome to today's third webinar in the Illinois Connected Communities series with Benton Institute for Broadband and Society, Illinois Office of Broadband, and University of Illinois Extension. My name's Nancy Wadrago. I'm a Community and Economic Development Specialist for U of I Extension. And before I turn it over to Bill Coleman today, I want to let participants know that they should put questions in the chat box at any moment. And Bill is going to moderate those questions for each presenter as they finish their respective presentations. We've got 4 presentations today, and I'm going to turn it over to Bill so that he can give a more thorough introduction to all our presenters. And I just want to give a big thanks to the panel as a whole today for coming on and serving to provide this educational outreach with us. We're so happy to have you on. Bill?
Thank you so much, Nancy. My name is Bill Coleman. I'm here on behalf of the Benton Institute for Broadband and Society, and really excited about this session. We always operate in our programs with the stool of broadband access or infrastructure, broadband adoption or digital equity, and then broadband use, increasing sophistication of use. And it's really important not to leave this third leg of the stool out, because that's where the real value of the network investments come in. Local organizations have to step up their use of technology, their sophistication, to really get the value from the network. And for people who have heard me before, my analogy is that it's fine to have the exercise bicycle in the basement, but you actually have to get on it and ride it to get the value. And that's the same thing now with the use leg of the stool. And so how do we transform our local business communities, our local education opportunities, agriculture, and health? And we've seen all kinds of transformation really being forced on us over the last 2 years with the pandemic, where we went from no one doing video conferencing to everyone doing video conferencing, to kids going to school from home, people getting their health care from home, and so on. But we know that these transformations had been taking place prior to the pandemic. And certainly we've got the great examples today that are going to show how to make sure that your own community members, your institutions, your business community can keep up in this changing world of technology. We've seen the big impact of Amazon technology on small business and so on. And so you just, as a small business, no matter what business you're in, you need to make sure that you're keeping up with the technology so that you're not losing market share, so that you can be as productive as your competitors and be able to really stay in business and grow your business. Today, we're going to look at 4 sectors in particular around the use concept, and we're going to look at education. And Adrienne Pickett is one of our Science and Technology Fellows from the University of Illinois, working for the Office of Broadband in collaboration with the Illinois Extension Service. And Adrienne's going to talk about what we call our pathways for education for technology adoption. And we'll get Adrienne on the call here in just a moment. But we also are going to look at agriculture. So often we look at rural states and see all cornfields or bean fields and say, well, man, we don't really need broadband here because there's no people here. But we also know that in agriculture, there's huge creators of data, from animal management to soil fertility and water content in the soils, equipment maintenance, marketing and selling your agricultural products. And we have Heather Hampton Nodal, who's Vice President of Nodal Limited Farms and as President of the American Agri-Women Association. is going to fill us in on her perspective on the needs for broadband for the ag community. Eric Sampson is from Bradley University. He manages the Small Business Development Center there, and he's really going to be talking about promoting and supporting small business technology adoption. Up and down Main Street and in people's homes and rural communities, people are operating businesses. They need the broadband to be competitive, but and oftentimes, especially in rural areas, but also in urban areas, it's not exactly like tech vendors come in and try and assist small businesses to make better use of technology. Many times these small businesses are on their own in terms of trying to gain the knowledge and develop the strategies and then implement those strategies to improve their sales, to find new suppliers, to increase their market area. And so we're going to be welcoming Eric here in a moment to tell us about that. And then finally, Parker Janae is works with communities to help bring healthcare and better wellness to communities wherever they're located, reaching people in their homes and in community centers, nursing homes, and so on. So it's she's going to provide a very interesting story of how her organization uses technology to reach people where they are, not only during the pandemic, but certainly going forward. So we'll welcome Parker here as our final speaker. And so with that, I'm going to welcome Adrienne Pickett. As I mentioned, she's one of our science and policy fellows working with the Office of Broadband in Benton. Adrienne's got a PhD in education and brings a wealth of experience in the classroom and in academics for thinking about broadband and technology. Adrienne, welcome.
Thank you, Bill. Thank you, everyone, for being here. This is an incredibly important topic, and I am going to go ahead and just get started. I'm going to take my camera off and share my content. Just a moment. Okay, so as Bill mentioned, I'm working as an Illini Science Policy Scholar through University of Illinois Extension with the Illinois Office of Broadband. And part of what I'm doing this year is working with Bill and Adrienne and Robbie with Benton Institute and working with communities and thinking through their strategies of deploying broadband, using broadband, and having broadband adopted throughout their communities. So actually, I'm going to play my presentation. There we go. And so in just thinking about this presentation, I wanted to set the stage and just thinking about our current context of being in this global pandemic, and also thinking about virtual learning, which Bill mentioned is not something that's new. We've been, to some extent, learning in virtual environments for some time now. It was not on the scale that it's currently at. Conducting business virtually, again, not at the scale that it's currently at. I was an Instacart shopper before it was trendy. I like to make that joke. But certainly with the pandemic, things have certainly ramped up, and all of our digital technologies are being required of us because we have physically been locked down in our homes and required to communicate and do business and work and learn at home. So in thinking about that, thinking through that consequence of a lockdown or limited time in public spaces due to the shuttering of businesses and such. I've had to think about what kinds of skills I need to develop myself. What skills do my family members and friends need to have at their disposals so that they can be active members in their digital environments? How do they, in other words, use FaceTime? How do they get that technology, that technological skill under their belt so that they can FaceTime with me, FaceTime with their siblings, their family members? How do we get that access to resources so that we can teach ourselves how to FaceTime, or get that resource, get a hold of that resource so that we can learn how to use that Instacart app? Because all these things, they're not necessarily, especially for people that are in their 40s, 50s, 60s, etc. It's not necessarily intuitive. These are skills that we have to acquire. So for me, the answer involves education through and through. So whether this is formal education in terms of taking a class, or informal, maybe you YouTube it, right? Google it is what they say. Do a search online, look it up. That's our new dictionary, right? So look it up and see what it means to FaceTime somebody, or to download the Instacart app, install it on your phone. There's a certain sophistication that we've become comfortable with in terms of using our digital technologies. And it's also made me think about, as Bill mentioned, my degree is in education, the different ways that we talk about education, from schools, career technical ed, professional development, and lifelong learning. So we've already, again, been exposed to career and technical education, most of which, has been taking place online or has a history of taking course online, as well as professional development and trainings prior to pandemic. And my employment at the university, I had to take some online professional development courses in order to continue my employment at the university. So that wasn't anything new. However, I would say for me, before the pandemic and during the pandemic, I was a teacher, and learning how to adapt my classroom teaching style and classroom delivery of content online, that was an adjustment. And I think it's even helped me appreciate even more that learning is indeed across the lifespan. It is something that I'll show later is certainly being ramped up. So, as I mentioned, educational technologies have been ramped up for teachers in terms of their training. They've needed to acquire the skills necessary to conduct courses online in order to manage systems for students to complete and submit work online, and as well as create communication methods for communicating with their students and students' families, etc., online. So lots of changes have taken place over the course of just under 3 years in terms of virtual learning. I've given a couple examples here of the ways in which we saw children who were at home and learning. They were made to adapt to this new environment. So kids that I worked with when our classroom was shuttered, their families went to PBS Learning Media and were able to engage in some of those lessons. And there's just a host of different kinds of content in science broken down by grade level, where parents can pick out lessons for their children. ABC Mouse is for really early learning individuals. So it's this great, really enthusiastic resource there. Khan Academy, I don't know how familiar many of you are with the resources they offer, but the link that I've provided breaks down math by grade level. But really, I mean, you could enter at any point, just according to your skills, sort of where you were at. And the last thing I've included here is one of the things that kids like to do, or schools like to provide for kids, is that maybe annual museum trip, or annual trip to a place to do some applied learning or experiential learning activity. Well, when things were shuttered during the pandemic, they didn't have an opportunity to participate in that. So organizations adjusted. And so museum tours began taking place virtually. And so this website compiled a list of some of the top 10 virtual museum tours where parents or teachers could assign, for example, an object at an art museum or a history museum for a student to look at and maybe, write a report on. Again, some really invaluable resources, ways that you can engage your children learning at home. So as I mentioned previously, we've been familiar with how career and tech education has occurred online and professional development courses. And these are just examples of the ways in which career and tech education have taken place, that have been even ramped up now. So how many Zoom meetings do you have this week, right? I can look at my calendar and probably count the number that I have just today, and there are quite a few. Things like virtual professional mentoring and coaching opportunities that you might do via FaceTime, or professional conferences and webinars. You still want to meet with the members of your field annually, and so that could take place on, say, GoToWebinar, as opposed to going to a conference in person. Now that things are beginning to open up again, you might have the opportunity actually to travel and meet at conferences. But if there is a point at which things are shuttered again, we have this system in place for us to meet as a large group, as we're doing today, via Zoom. Okay, and so lifelong learning. So people mean different things when they use this term, but I bring in this definition established by UNESCO first in the 70s, but it's been updated several times to include the following. So it's the concept of learning as a process that continues throughout life to address an individual's learning needs. The term is used widely in adult education to refer to learning processes in many forms and at many levels. So, I mean, again, probably as generic can get, but I think it's designed to capture a lot of processes, a lot of activities, a lot of the kinds of things where an individual has to change and adapt to new ways of thinking, information that they need to process, skills that they need to develop for this ever-changing world that we are living in. And so these are some of the examples where lifelong learning can take place. If you've heard of MOOCs, they are massive open online courses. Okay, you can take MOOCs at the University of Illinois at Urbana-Champaign, or other well-regarded institutions, universities around the country and around the world. You can learn about and take courses and be certified in areas such as like coding. You can go on YouTube and receive instruction on becoming a pilot and be guided through that process of becoming a pilot. I've mentioned here well-being apps that include mindfulness, yoga, etc. So again, learning how to meet your needs, your bodily needs, or learning about a specific subject or training or area that you want to be certified in. Okay, I've also included in here a leisure web series. So maybe you just want to learn more about perfumes. Okay, that would fall under lifelong learning, or just learning for learning's sake. Okay, like I don't know a lot about medieval England, but I want to, because I have an interest in that topic, I'm going to listen to facts about it on a podcast series. So most recently, a report has been published by UNESCO in 2020, in which they are trying to advance the idea of a global culture of lifelong learning. So they're saying that this is going to be key to addressing the challenges that are currently faced around the world, from climate crisis to technological and demographic changes, not to mention those posed by COVID-19, and the inequalities that have been exacerbated by this. I've included the link here, and I know that you all will probably receive the slides, so you can certainly look at that when you have the time. But basically, in thinking about education, my hope is, in talking about education, is that you can think about the ways that you have used online environments to enhance your learning, educational resources that you use to enhance your lifelong learning, or ways in which you're promoting digital literacy in your community, as well as some community victories that you might be sort of at the helm of within your community. So that is all that I have. And I'm happy to entertain any questions you might have.
Adrienne, there's a question about how do you sort through all these learning resources that are online, and especially to make sure that they're valid, that they're not scams, that they're not full of misinformation. Any recommendations for that?
That's a really good question. I think for me, I try to start with the sources that are institutional ones. So I can stop sharing my screen. Hold on. Stop. Okay. So for me, I try to stick to like the Illinois State website and their resources on career and technological education, as opposed to just any sort of the first link that comes up on a Google search engine, or PBS is well known. So I start with the well-known sort of tried and tested organizations and kind of go from there and comb through that, because I think that's part of becoming responsible and literate, and then kind of decide, okay, can I trust this? Is this a valid resource? Does it have a slant? If it does have a slant, then okay, identifying what that slant is, but keeping it generic as possible, and kind of sticking to the information.
Yeah, and certainly if they ask you for your Visa card, that's the first a big
Right.
warning, I guess. And then secondly, with you mentioned just the use of Google, if it's a website and you say, type in the name of the website and then say reviews on the end of that, query, you can get feedback from others as to what, what they think of that resource.
Exactly.
What do you think the next thing is in education, online education? What's the next, maybe I'm catching you off guard here, but where do you, what's the next cool thing that's going to be on online education to make that a more, a better experience, do you think?
That's a really good question. I mean, we have educators and ed tech folks on this call, so I actually have that question for them. I would love to see what smart features could be included or connected to help people with different learning challenges. So if there's a smart, I don't know, if there's an app that can help someone with like a learning challenge to read something on a website more clearly, or digest that, or translate it more clearly. Or, I mean, there's already that's been helping with like computer assisted design and things of that nature. But I'd like to see what more can happen.
Okay, good. And then, of course, before the pandemic, we had started to see this whole reverse classroom thing where kids, instead of doing hands-on homework, they might watch a video of something and then be tested on that, when they come back to school on site, so instead of having the teacher spend the time lecturing, the teacher can spend more one-on-one time. And I expect we'll continue to see that as part of the educational experience. Here's a question I'm not sure I really understand. Ted Hollander says, when should we expect camera on in educational programs? Is that, Ted, are you saying that the camera, there'd always be room cameras that would record the classroom, or can you clarify that?
It might be referring to the camera on for participants of a particular classroom in order to basically verify that someone is there, someone is paying attention. That's a way to take attendance also, that teachers use. So I think that it also has been something that's contested amongst teachers and administrators, because there might be a lot of reasons for that camera to be off, because it's someone's home situation, and it's a very vulnerable thing to have the camera on the entire time. So it's an interesting concept to try to negotiate. So
yeah, it's interesting because I spent most of my educational life sitting in a classroom, maybe not being quite as present as the teacher would have hoped, even though I'm sitting right there. So doodling or thinking or doing all those things. Adrienne, thanks. That's really eye-opening presentation in terms of all that educational content that's online. I've often challenged communities that, no matter how big a community, they could have the best educated kids in the world using these resources that are out there for kids that are math whizzes in terms of being able to attend MIT classes, from kids that more like me, not so good in math, that a Khan Academy or other tools can really lead you step by step through the process. I know that in South Korea that they take their best teachers from across the country and record those and make that available as a library, so that if you're in 7th grade and your math teacher is somehow ineffective, you can be way behind and never catch up. And so, but they make this resource available from the best teachers to be able to share that best practices. I think that's something that would really be something we could do here. So but Good. Thank you so much. I appreciate the presentation. Our next speaker is Heather Hampton Nodal, and Heather has been involved in broadband. Now, it's so funny, so many of us not necessarily know that much about broadband, but have just had to become experts in it as a result of the emerging technologies or the need for better broadband in on the farm site and so on. So Heather has been involved with committees with the FCC and is in a publication that the soybean growers and Benton Institute published around agriculture and broadband on the farm. So welcome, Heather. Thanks for joining us today.
Thank you. And Bill, are you able to see the screen?
Your slides look great.
Bits and beans, so you don't actually see all the PowerPoint background behind it?
Nope, it's just perfect.
Okay, thank you. And thank you for having me today. Yes, my advocating for better broadband journey actually began officially around 2002. So we've been at it a while here in Montgomery County, Illinois. And just in this picture alone, I thought it might be interesting for those who may not be in agriculture to identify that this item right here is this yellow. I should also ask, can you see my cursor move over the screen as I use that?
Yes.
Pointer? Okay. I call it a little yellow cap, but that is our satellite receiver on a combine. And on our farm, we've been employing this or deploying this since the mid 1990s. So that allows us to track things like yield data to determine nutrient uptake in crops and also drainage patterns in fields and where we can make different management changes over time. We also, within this same photo, then you're going to see things like these antennae. We've had CB radios since I was born and growing up on the farm, and we continue to use those today to communicate across fields and across larger areas. We even pay an additional tower fee to extend the reach of our CBs to our semi-drivers. As the industry changes and economies of scale have changed within at least corn and soybean production, it is probably rare to find a farm that doesn't have its own semi at this point. Now, what we can't see as well is in these cabs, everybody also has their cell phone. And for those who are not involved in agriculture, you may or may not realize that one corn plant today would have the equivalent in January of 2022. One plant would have as much data in it as your typical smartphone, say top of the line, I shouldn't say typical, top of the line smartphone sold in January of 2022. So when we look at the potential for data and gathering information so we can make better decisions, this idea of not only bandwidth, but connectivity across many fronts is absolutely critical for us to be able to continue to help clothe and feed and fuel with actual renewable fuels the country and even the world. So one farmer right now feeds about 168 people around the globe, not just domestically. This is our family. We're involved in production. We don't normally stand in a wheat field, but we've needed to have a picture taken last summer, and the wheat was beautiful and we had record yields. It was great. But I loved Adrian's background in education and online learning and lifelong learning, because this guy here, Brian, my husband, would come home from, say, a 16-hour day, which during harvest time it's pretty average actually. So 16 hours. He had been in a combine or been running a grain cart collecting the grain from the combine, and yet he would come home and he would still get on YouTube and watch more videos of people combining in Ukraine or combining in Australia or combining in Minnesota or Winnipeg or wherever. Or during the winter time, instead of watching sports all the time, he would constantly, still does, it's not just past tense, but he would pull up videos of soil tilth and mechanization and ways to preserve as much organic matter, but yet open up soil so that it can do what it needs to do in terms of aerate and allow microbes to get what they need from the atmosphere. So he's constantly researching those sorts of things. So when I look at online learning, it happens in so many forms. And now we find ourselves moving to a new platform called granular for record keeping, but it's also so dependent on our connectivity. So when we think about connectivity, this is Hillsborough, which is the county seat of Montgomery County. And this is actually around Halloween time. So there's lots of community festivals and a lot of fun things happening, and the local historic movie theaters very active. They'll put up false fronts in front of the movie theater to create, opening night events for people. But our county Economic Development Corporation, Montgomery County, EDC, was instrumental in recruiting initially the first of its kind two-county broadband pilot, working with the state of Illinois to fund. So 2006 or so, I think we got the authorization. And then it was 2011 when we finally went live after working with attorneys on the contracts and everything to essentially build out a fiber optic backbone that the state helped put some money into initially, and a redundant fiber optic backbone, and then the opportunity for line of sight wireless. So the Economic Development Corporation, we worked with, at that time, I was part-time staff, had helped found it as a volunteer chairman before that. But we helped work with communities to try to site, well, not to try, we actually cited locations for the point-to-point wireless type radios that were needed to actually set up the architecture to make a ring work that could actually be redundant and provide better service. Where I'm at right now today, still in the countryside, we are relying on that very line of sight system. And on a really good day, I can get 13 to 15 meg down. Again, that's a really good day. No atmospheric disturbances, no major flyways of snow geese, which do migrate through here. Nothing like that that could interfere with that. And then my upload speed might be 1.5. I think I don't do speed tests every day, but I think at 11 o'clock on an October night, I think I got it up close to 3 meg up. So nowhere near what we hear talk of now with 100 by 100 symmetrical speeds, but it's enough for me to be joining you today, and I'm thankful for that. Yet we continue to try to push forward on things like fiber optic. So at this point, Montgomery County is also working with a private fiber optic provider to build out fiber optic to the premises. We have 6 communities that have been built out, and they're in the process of building out 5 more. But our hope and our need is to deliver this into literally the last mile and get it out into the rural areas, because hopefully you'll understand even more as I work through some of our use case, if you will, in agriculture and row crop production, why this is so critical. And not only for us as a farmer, but for the larger issue of providing food and doing it environmentally soundly in a way that helps everyone in the long run. So you can see a red circle here on the map. This is a map of Illinois soil types, and I love it because I love soils. I'm kind of a geek, and I love the variety that we have in Illinois. You may drive across these, say you drive from Chicago to St. Louis, and it may look much the same, but underneath it's like mixed DNA everywhere you go. And so each site has different potential, and we have to manage for a lot of that. What this shows is we've got some highly glaciated soils here from the Wisconsin Glacier, and you can almost see this is Route 16. If you ever drive from Charleston or Paris down toward Litchfield and over to the river, basically at Hardin. And that's essentially where the glacier stopped. And you can really see a difference for the most recent glacier. Well, that has implications for how we farm. So what you're looking at in this photo is this glaciated, very high organic matter, very rich soil that you can almost just leave it alone and something's going to grow that you can, because I should say, it's going to grow because it was well drained. This particular field in this area was won in a poker match. I don't know how many, probably more than 100 years ago, approximately. I don't know the exact date, but because somebody who won that actually knew some Dutch guys who knew how to drain stuff. So they brought in horses and they wrapped up their legs in leather so that the snakes, the rattlesnakes, and also wild hogs would not bite and damage the horses. They were able to create drainage ditches and then hand lay clay tiles to make this some of the most fertile soil in the entire world. It's Illinois is very fortunate in this. And we can talk about other issues related to land use, but I think it's in all of our best interest to be aware of just how important and significant this is for global food production. Ukraine is the only other place where you're going to find the soils like we have, quite frankly. We've got some other parts in the United States that do a good job, but on such a broad scale as what we have, it's rare to find. Now, I talked about the glaciated soils. Now we go a little bit south of Route 16 and you start to see a lighter soil type. So we have to use things, different type production practices. So we use things like cover crops, and even people who aren't in agriculture may have heard that buzzword at this point and may think, well, why can't that be done everywhere? Because it doesn't make sense everywhere. Again, think of soil like DNA and think of it almost like a genetic therapy where we're really trying to target our approach. And that's why this precision agriculture that we rely on, that needs bandwidth through satellite, through cellular, and ultimately through fiber, is so critical to help us make better decisions. One cornfield has the amount of data of the Library of Congress. Let that sink in. One cornfield, and I don't know if that's, I'm guessing it's a 40-acre cornfield. This was a quote shared on a recent Federal Communication Commission call that I was part of, and Chairwoman Rosenworcel quoted that, as well as one of the other FCC commissioners or members. It's really phenomenal how much data, when we look at how can we help each plant do its maximum production with the least amount of inputs. And this isn't just an environmental statement. What you're seeing in this picture is two different versions of cover crops. Well, actually, it's probably the same 6-way blend. But in this field, there were some residual herbicide issues that weren't supposed to happen, according to the way things are labeled and the way we had managed it appropriately. But it was kind of an outlier. Yet we're still able to farm it, no problem. We still had good growth. It just wasn't the type of growth we saw in this field of those cover crops. So we adapt, we move on, we learn from it. We try to continue to incorporate precision technology by aftermarket parts. So you see one of our sons here helping, and at this point he's 13 years old, I think. Now he's 14. So he knows how to, basically, this is an air seeder, and we've modified here with different tillage type parts, again, trying to be very sensitive to the soil's needs and how we can minimize any harmful impact on the soil, but yet maximize the opportunity for those seeds to germinate and get a really good stand, get their roots firmly grounded, if you will. But it comes back to, you're going to see these little yellow caps over here everywhere, a lot of satellite driven data. What we've been able to do because of our use of precision agriculture is, just in the last year, we were able to participate in a University of Illinois research trial where we can look at nitrogen application in one trial and seeding populations in another trial on the same field at the same time. So you're seeing a lot of these kind of sketchy patterns because it was programmed into the system that we will adjust our rate. So the number of seeds per section, whether it's by yard and by a 20-foot swath, or the amount of nitrogen specifically applied in a given point in the field. And that was programmed in by University of Illinois, then we put it into our tools. The problem was, I'm going to come to a picture a little bit later, and I want you to remember when I mentioned this, the problem was when we went to use our sprayer, because typically we do all, if we can, if weather allows, our own spraying and application of things like nitrogen. Usually we try to put our nitrogen directly in the ground, close to the seed's roots where it can reach it. It's called a 2x2 approach. And then we try to follow up immediately after with post-emergence. So once the plant has come up, try to do another pass with nitrogen. Problem is that nitrogen that we purchased, October 2021, that was what, 5 months ago, 6 months ago now that we're in March. At that point, we had prepaid for nitrogen. We had nitrogen prices locked in at $385 per ton. I was just looking at our financial records in the last week. Today, I opened up an invoice for this year's nitrogen price, $1,490 per ton. Again, please let that sink in, because that is how much, from $385 to almost $1,500 in 6 months. One of the primary inputs that you need to produce ultimately food, whether it's feedstock or renewable fuel or food or medicines. One kernel of corn has 1,000 different uses. So I want everybody to understand we have a financial imperative to do this as well as we can. And it costs money to do it as well, that precision technology. We're also working in nature. So we can't just use artificial intelligence and pre-program a drone to go out and say, okay, plant the crop, it is April 7th, and then come back and apply nitrogen on May 10th and do a pass of something else on. We can't just do that because nature happens with or without us. And we have to try to manage for that. We have to try to mitigate and then actively manage. And what you're seeing here is 2019, where we had record rainfall. In Illinois, we get about roughly 36 inches of rain a year, typically annually. However, between mid-March and May 30th, we had close to, I think we had 33 inches of rain. And that is the planting window, actually last week of March to optimally the second week of May would be your ideal planting window for where we are at in Illinois. But we had about 5 days due to federal crop insurance guidelines to do what normally takes us about 2 months because of these rainfall patterns. And what you're seeing here was the planting progress as of May 7th. This was soybean planting, and it wasn't just Illinois. What had happened was the massive forest fires of 2018. Think about Paradise, California, where entire towns were burned up. In Canada, there were fires where even in Fargo, North Dakota, hundreds of miles away, you were getting these massive dust clouds and things that summer and fall. Massive forest fires seeded the atmosphere with a lot of particulates that then helped contribute to these widespread and long enduring rains.
Heather, you've got about 5 more minutes.
All right. Well, I'm trying to provide a well-rounded look here because it's not so simple as we're just going to flip a switch and all the world's problems are solved. Because we work in this environment of nature and everything changes. The chemistry, the biology, everything changes all the time. So AI farms, you can see artificial intelligence for future agricultural resilience, management, and sustainability. That is an initiative led by the University of Illinois, and you can see they have several thrusts, research thrusts. I'm also on that advisory committee as a farmer representative, and we have an update scheduled in the next few weeks. But some of the issues that we are reliant on broadband and data for are right here, right at the forefront of things. People may call it climate change, but we call it adaptive management and regenerative agriculture, because that's what we do all the time. So we're looking at soils. How can we get sensors in soils? And what do we do once we have this data? How can we get it to where we can use it on our farm? We had participated in a data gathering program through a firm, which now they want us to buy our own data from our fields for 7 years because we discontinued our subscription with that company because they were trying to start up a company to say, we'll help landowners determine the best cash rent for their land and basically cut out the farmer. That really wasn't the best use of data in our minds. But you can see soil carbon stocks. How are we going to quantify soil carbon stocks? Right now, it's extremely expensive to try to test for that on a field by field basis. So we need more broadband, more connectivity. This is inside that sprayer unit I mentioned. When we went to spray, what happened was because of the different section controls, it did not want to communicate to the satellite. So we had to capture the data in the monitor in the cab. I've talked a little bit about sustainability, the idea that this all costs money. And a combine, when my husband first started farming, we were married a few years after that, cost $150,000. Today, it's $750,000. That's once you actually buy the head. And the head would be this. So this is a bean head as an example. And for our part, we really don't want to become the farm that you see in front of you. And this is actually custom harvesting, which happens a lot through the Plain States and up into Canada. But we would rather work with our family and support our communities. And so that's where I leave it with you. And we can pick up questions related to broadband connectivity. And I'll see if I can answer it. If I can, I'll try to get the answers. Thank you.
Great. Thanks so much. Can you just talk a little bit about the crop marketing and the importance of broadband and the data around that?
Absolutely. So the sensitivity of U.S. Department of Agriculture collects data, and they collect data on when people have planted their crops and what they anticipate their yields will be. And they do this throughout the year, throughout the growing season. That data is so sensitive that they have a lockdown at the agency before they release it, before they do a crop report. And so no one can go in and out of the room, the building, whatever, shades are pulled, everything's locked down. And you can find some interesting historical stories of how there were breaches to that early on. Why this matters: when those reports are released, there can be a market movement in a matter of less than a minute. You think about, if you've ever read stories about high-speed trading on Wall Street, and companies were trying to get closer and closer to Wall Street itself because of that millisecond, difference in seconds for their trading advantage. It's similar with agriculture. So it's not only those reporting times, though. We need to have that access through our cell phones, through our computers, to be able to make trades for commodity marketing, especially in a commodity environment: corn, soybeans, wheat, cotton, the major crops that are called cash crops. And we use a lot of different tools. So it's not just a buy and sell. There are also different tools that we use for insurance purposes, essentially within the trading system, that are also affected greatly by how quickly and in real time, how we are able to make trades. I remember after one, it was like easily a $5,000 to $10,000 move in less than a minute. And that's like small potatoes in terms of the type of movement you could see.
Yeah, well, thanks for that. And the famous Eddie Murphy movie, Trading Places, I think, where they're cornering the market on orange juice or whatever, I think is representative of that. But we know that there's, a fiber network might have 6 milliseconds of delay, and a satellite might have over a second of delay. You think about the possible impact of that across rural areas, really important.
It is. And there were several of us who were concerned with the RDOF, the Rural Development Opportunity Fund announcement that came in December of 2020, where they had auction proceedings at the Federal Communication Commission, but they kind of changed, they changed the eligibility requirements that weighted the auction. And so it was concerning to see that one company walked away with almost $1 billion, like $885 million, to deploy low Earth orbit satellites in an essentially unproven technology that they'll say there's not as much latency because of the low Earth orbit type thing. But it was really, when we talk about policy and people who are on the line who might be interested in policy, if there's a way to protect, I don't say protect against that, maybe we should say promote the local operators who want to get to this fiber to the premises, that ultimately puts all of us on more of an even playing field, literally and figuratively. That would be optimal.
Great. Thank you so much. Your presentation was fascinating, and it'd be great to state, where agriculture is so important in rural Illinois. That alone could drive the demand for fiber optics. So,
well, yeah, and just artificial intelligence alone itself. I just scanned through some of those slides, but the ability to like fly a drone and identify a specific pest in a specific area. Think about what we could do to limit overall pesticide use if you can spot it early and go in and target that. It's amazing, but the cost to do that at this point is prohibitive. But there are opportunities on the horizon. So thank you.
Thank you. Next up, we have Eric Sampson with the SBDC at Bradley University. The SBDCs can be a tremendous benefit to your community businesses to help them adopt new technologies and make great choices. Welcome, Eric.
Hey, thank you very much for having me, Bill. I do appreciate it. Boy, we've heard some pretty fascinating stuff here so far. Really appreciate the presentations thus far by Adrian and by Heather. As a former futures and options broker myself, I can say I definitely have a heart for the challenges that the ag producers are going through these days, for sure. So onto a little bit different topic. With my current role, I want to thank you again for having me. I'm the director of the Illinois Small Business Development Center at Bradley University, and my name is Eric Sampson. I'm glad to be here today. When I was working on a financial technology adventure of my own at one point in time, a good friend and a member of my team brought to mind this quote, and I'd like to share it with you as we're talking about utilizing and adopting new technology. And it's actually, I had to hunt this down and find out that it's actually from British science fiction writer Arthur C. Clarke. And it goes like this: any sufficiently advanced technology is indistinguishable from magic. And I think about how that applies in really some of the things that we can almost take for granted these days, in that when we expect something to work, it just works, right? But I would urge you to think back to the first time you sent or received an email or a text message, or read something on Twitter, or tweeted a message out yourself, or think about the first time that you made a connection with somebody, maybe from your high school on Facebook, or maybe when you were looking at career options through LinkedIn. It's just kind of amazing to see how some of that stuff has changed our lives. And if we think about that, of course, that plays into how we operate and make management decisions around our small businesses as well. So as we think about these things, and these are not really in a priority order, and yet these things that I talk about are ways that broadband does improve business management in just a myriad of different functional areas. So when we think about marketing and branding and advertising, and basically making people aware of our small businesses and what it is that they offer in terms of service or product, or our ability to create a relationship, right? A client engagement, improve a customer experience that draws that customer to be closer to our business, and generate loyalty, those types of things. I'm often talking with businesses who are having to be actively out in the field, utilizing some type of remote technology while they're preparing quotes, or estimating, or developing project management scope and scale. Obviously, being able to utilize broadband technology and transfer that data, and sometimes being able to bring in up to the minute notifications is so useful, and in some points vital. We talk about point of sale technology and what that can mean to more effective inventory management, understanding, are we facing excessive levels of shrink? Are we ahead of scale in terms of ordering? Are we building a backlog in some items, and are we short of stock in others? Being able to understand some of that information is vital as well. Not to mention aspects around cash management, invoicing, budgeting, our accounting processes, record keeping processes as well. And of course, never one that you want to forget about would be sales and customer relationship management. That said, of course, even understanding what needs to take place in terms of production planning and the ability to streamline the delivery or the output of your products, especially when you're challenged by some of the things that we're facing in terms of hiccups and delays in the current supply chain situation as well. So obviously, broadband and its employment across many aspects of business, small business, large business, rural business, urban business, regardless, can be life or death in the effective management of these businesses. So one thing that, of course, then is a challenge, right? As we're talking today about this importance of use and utilization and applying this technology, is an MIT Sloan Management Review and Capgemini Consulting survey found that the vast majority of managers believe that achieving digital transformation is critical to their organizations. Yet 63% of them say that the pace of technological change in their workplaces is too slow. And so again, I want to underline this, that this is not just a big business problem. It's not just a small business problem, an urban business problem, a rural business problem. But one of the things that we do see is it can be exacerbated to some degree in small business from the standpoint that sometimes the challenge is with that small business owner themselves, kind of, for lack of a better word, kind of being the bottleneck in that situation. So I want to share with you just a little bit of anecdotal information from some aspects of some different programs that our SBDC has been able to implement in our community. And I share this on behalf of another contractor who has now joined our SBDC as the assistant director. And I'm so glad to have him on board. But he's been really a crucial part of developing a restaurant e-commerce and retail e-commerce initiative that we were able to bring forth due to some funding through the CARES Act. And really what we were trying to do is to reach out to the community and say, okay, we have these businesses that are impacted by what's going on in the with the pandemic situation. And we know that there's a tremendous challenging environment as a result. And many of these brick and mortar businesses did not have much exposure, or at least not much ability to be found due to their web presence lacking, or their lack of engagement through social media and those types of things in terms of marketing, promotion, and advertising, right? So I'm happy to report that we actually had 24 restaurants and 78 different non-restaurant retail businesses reach out requesting assistance in this area. I will say this, right? Sometimes the heavy lifting of some of the operational aspects of a restaurant or a retail business really are too difficult to change very quickly, right? We're talking about steering a pretty big ship when we're talking about the integration of point of sale technology from tip to tail through, for example, a restaurant. And in fact, I found both from Chris Youngmark and actually through other anecdotes from Casey Peterson, who is formerly of the Greater Peoria Economic Development Council. Many of you probably know Casey. He's currently the Business Retention and Expansion Manager at the Bloomington Normal Economic Development Council. But both he and Chris shared with me anecdotes about the fact that while we had restaurants that were seeking assistance, some of the consulting that we were trying to provide was in the area of upgrading and integrating point of sale technology, utilizing the cloud and so on and so forth. And while we could see that there was an opportunity to provide them assistance at no cost, no charge to the clients, and really try to bring in some additional expertise to bear, because probably somewhat the nature of these small independent businesses, they were unwilling to undertake that entire overhaul of that technology to what their current traditional cash register style operations were. So again, one of the things that we hope to do, certainly I'm sure that the Benton Institution is trying to make progress along, is to encourage the adoption of these types of opportunities. So while I say those were some particularly challenging situations, I don't want to go without saying that we certainly had seen some tremendous successes as well. Really what we found was for those businesses that were kind of difficult to find, right? They didn't have a web presence. They maybe hadn't updated their Google business profile. They maybe didn't have a Facebook or an Instagram page, that type of thing. Our consultants were able to provide an overhaul and to provide some guidance in regard to that. We did see restaurants and retail businesses really take some very advantageous steps in enhancing that. So, I liken it to the idea of, we're used to brick and mortar businesses being able to be found partly, if you think about it, through the flow of traffic patterns, right? So one thing that the pandemic situation made clear was that traffic patterns can change, and they can change quite dramatically. So think about those businesses that probably had exposure because they had good signage on the front of their brick and mortar store. They had very prominent billboard advertising, that type of thing. Now imagine that all of that went away and you're expecting your clients to be able to find your business. Well, these days, obviously through the utilization of technology and smartphone technology and internet search and so on and so forth, right? Those businesses that are existing out here that are not utilizing the available e-commerce technology in order to create a digital presence or a web presence, are almost as if they have a business that is taking down all their signage, and yet they're still hoping for a client to be able to find them, right? The the instinct or the reflex these days is when you hear about a new business is to pick up your smartphone and do a quick Google search, do a quick search of the internet, partly because you want to find out, okay, is this really a legitimate business that I'm hearing about? Is there some credibility there? But also sometimes because of the opportunity to engage partly as a potential loyal client, or partly because you're looking for an opportunity to utilize online ordering for something, a product or service that organization or company might be offering, and you want the opportunity to engage with that company in that way. So again, without adopting and adapting to the changes in technology and utilizing the technology that's available, these businesses, of course, are missing out. So the Harvard Business Review offers some suggestions to small businesses and really businesses in general toward taking the mystery out of technology and really helping their workforce, as well as, of course, when we're talking about small business owners, sometimes we're talking about that person who wears all the hats, right? But sometimes they have to convince themselves a little bit about some of these things. So it's important to kind of lay out, what is to be gained by the utilization of technology. What can we do in terms of efficiency or making the work more pleasant? One of the big challenges, of course, that people have is that sometimes they're just simply unfamiliar with what the technology is or how to interact with it. So sometimes they find that making the unfamiliar more familiar through changing some of the routines in smaller increments can make that happen a little bit more effectively and a little bit more easily. The other thing can be, and this might have been part of the challenge that we saw with the restaurants and hoping that they would adopt new cloud-based point of sale services and that type of thing, was that you maybe have to choose the tech wisely that you're going to try to integrate into the business, right? Is it functional? Is it intuitive? Is it easy to learn? Sometimes we're trying to make too big of a lift or too big of a change too abruptly. And that, of course, can be met with resistance, both from the small business owner and sometimes really from the workers within. The other thing, of course, they are encouraging people to do is try to make those technology solutions simply part of the routine, right? This is the way we do things now. So this is how we do things. And, going back to paper and pencil or going back to a clipboard hung on a nail, that type of thing, maybe that's just not the way that's going to be most effective and efficient in terms of profitability for our small business. Other things, of course, that they are encouraging from the Harvard Business Review is that you want to try to get other influencers on board early when you're making a change or adopting new technology. So not just the early adopters or, what we traditionally, might have pejoratively called the geeks or the nerds, right? Not just the people that want to utilize technology right off the bat, but really people that once they understand what's to be gained, really can make an influence on others, including their peers in the workplace. Also, and this is great, particularly coming on the heels of the discussion that Adrian had, is sometimes this customizing for utilizing new technology needs to have some flexibility in how the training is delivered, right? I mean, some learners are going to learn better with some online asynchronous learning. Some might be better served by utilizing a written manual in concert with interacting with the technology that you're using. Some others might learn better when there's perhaps an instructor-led interactive session, or perhaps learning from their peers in order to best utilize some of that technology. The other thing you want to do, of course, then is you want to highlight the wins early and often. So for example, you want to make note and celebrate, hey, we're saving time and getting certain functions done in the management of our business by utilizing this technology. Or maybe we've been able to hit our sales targets a little bit ahead of time or before we might have anticipated, or perhaps we're now stretching to targets that we didn't think were achievable because we've utilized and implemented new technology. And then, of course, they also encourage people to try to make it fun, right? Offer some rewards or perks or recognition to people that are participating in implementation of this technology and utilizing it effectively in their business. So we've talked a lot about here how to encourage within a small business organization the implementation of this technology. But I think another thing that's important to note as a factor that I think was causing some of the resistance that we saw was the fact that sometimes small business owners do feel like they're out here alone, having to do everything, right? They have to wear all those different hats. They have to understand insurance and accounting and bookkeeping and record keeping and billing and invoicing and sales and service and production management, so on and so forth, right? And I think it would be really beneficial if the people on this call take to heart the idea of encouraging small business owners to find some connectivity amongst others within their community and amongst other networks of entrepreneurs in the area. So obviously communication from their local economic development council. Obviously, we have the Ag Extension and the Illinois Extension Office on the line here. Of course, sharing wonderful cross collaborations between the universities and our education centers, as well as to entrepreneurs. Also, we want to encourage people to lever the expertise that you might find from the Service Corps of retired executives, right? We have people who are mentors providing expertise in these subject matter areas, such as personnel and HR management, or again, integration of technology, perhaps into accounting or that type of thing. Also, I encourage people to reach out to to engage with their local service organizations and their chambers of commerce and so on and so forth. And I also would encourage you to make use of the SBDC program that's available. I'd love to highlight the fact that, we really do try to approach the fact that our SBDC is here to serve our local community the best way that we can. And we want to be open to collaborative opportunities to work with other organizations. So for example, we like to work alongside the organization known as Distillery Labs here in the greater Peoria area. We work alongside our partners at the Minority Business Development Center downtown in Peoria as well. And we want to make sure that we're open to collaborations with the other chambers of commerce and the economic development councils in the area. And we're open to suggestions in terms of the programming that we provide. We do take heed of what we're hearing from our local small business community. And we do try to bring in subject matter experts to shed light on some of these particularly challenging issues. So I'd be happy to highlight a few of the different things about our SBDC that are special. One is that we're one of over 40 small business development centers in the state of Illinois. So I would encourage you that are outside the greater Peoria area to engage with your local SBDC. Our SBDC at Bradley University happens to have a 36+ year history of serving small businesses in the area. Through our funding with the Small Business Administration and in partnership at the state level with the Department of Commerce and Economic Opportunity, we're able to provide our services at no cost to our clients. What that means is that they can find some world-class assistance in terms of concrete steps on how to start a business, how to build a business plan, how to seek funding, how to pitch innovative ideas, so on and so forth. And we're certainly happy to offer those services. And we offer those in a confidential, and I like to say collaborative manner. In other words, we're here to not take an idea that somebody has for their small business or an area that they're hoping to develop or expand in their small business and share that with any of their potential competitors. But we're actually here to help them see that thing through and turn it into something beneficial to their small business. That in turn, of course, contributes to the economic development and health of our area. And I also like to say we approach this in a collaborative manner as well. Again, we're not here to take your ideas and turn them into something ourselves. Our success is really the small business owner's success. We find that outside of the programs that we offer via webinar and via in-person meetings and sessions like that, we're very effective in terms of creating one-on-one sessions and advising, sometimes on an ongoing basis, to many of our small business owners who are seeking additional management, marketing, e-commerce expertise, and so on and so forth. We encourage people to engage with our Small Business Development Center through social media, of course. Get on our mailing list as well, but reach out to us on Facebook or LinkedIn as well. And of course, I would be remiss if I didn't highlight the fact that here at the Turner Center for Entrepreneurship at Bradley University, we also have some other small business related assistance centers within our center as well. So we have an Illinois Procurement Technical Assistance Center. So we can help companies that are out here trying to position themselves to be successful in government contracting at the local, state, and federal level. Also, if you are a small business owner who's developed a particular widget and maybe you're selling them here in Illinois and maybe across the Midwest, and you say to yourself, well, maybe I could find a market for these in Mexico or Canada or New Zealand or Germany, right? We have experts on staff here who can assist in that. as well as we have a technology commercialization director who can assist companies in protecting their intellectual property and also looking at ways that they can monetize and commercialize their ideas. Also, of course, in tandem with the Turner School for Entrepreneurship at Bradley University, we have senior consulting projects where the professors put together teams of students from different disciplines who are out here trying to solve real world problems on behalf of the businesses that engage. And it's a great opportunity for the small businesses maybe to get some assistance in looking at ways that they can improve their businesses that they might not have had the manpower or person power to accomplish themselves. But it also creates a great experiential learning opportunity for the students as well. And then, of course, I want to make sure that I mention again that through the CARES Act, we have developed the opportunity for e-commerce support for restaurants and retailers as well. And that program continues to be open. So if you are aware of small businesses in the retail space or the restaurant space that need assistance in improving their digital footprint, we're certainly happy to assist in that manner. Also, I want to make sure that you do know, and I'll leave in the slides here, the opportunity that we serve about a 5-county radius around Greater Peoria, but please make use of that network all across the state. The SBDC locator link is included in the slides there as well. And I really want to thank all of you for doing what you can to kind of put the magic into small business, right? Unleashing that technology so it becomes undistinguishable from magic. Pardon me. Thanks again. My name is Eric Sampson. I'm the director of the Illinois Small Business Development Center at Bradley University.
Eric, thank you so much. Really interesting, and I know that through experience that the SBDCs can be of really great value to small businesses. So always very friendly folks working there and helpful. So thanks again. So I encourage our attendees to make good use of that.
Thanks for having me.
We are running a little bit late, and so we're going to jump right to our Parker Janae. She's the Associate Artistic Director of a group called Caros Alive. We're going to have Nancy's going to show a video here to introduce the concept, and then Parker's going to come on and talk more about it. Welcome, Parker. Parker, you're muted.
Oh, I'm sorry. I thought you just said you're going to start with the video. So I apologize.
Right?
Hi, I'm Parker Janae. I know that some people are going to have to pop off at 1 p.m. and I totally understand that to respect your time. I come to you today from Minneapolis, Minnesota, here on the shores of the day, Makaska in Minneapolis, the summer homeland of the Dakota people, and it's melting and that sun is shining. So I know people have been sitting for a long time. So I just invite you to just maybe take a stretch with me, shake something out a little bit. I am both an artist, an educator, and accessibility advocate, and I'm really thrilled to be here and joining you all, and honored to be in this space. My work with Kairos Alive as the Associate Artistic Director in our relationship to broadband and Zoom specifically started because working primarily in communities of older adults, folks with disability, and their intergenerational communities, we knew that people weren't having access to our work and our programming. We do participatory dance, music, and story-based research that says that dancing is good for you and good medicine. So in answering the education on well-being, we are all a team of professional artist educators. And our colleagues, Easter Seal, Florida, many years ago, pre-COVID, I think it was 2016 or 17 now, wanted to work with us. And we said, we've got this Zoom technology. Maybe we can try to do our training that we do and our basic tools and techniques on Zoom. So when COVID hit, we were already on Zoom. The video that we're about to show is specifically from a project based in the Fox Valley area of Wisconsin, but it's all over the state of Wisconsin and country. It's actually, there's more technology being invented with it as we speak. So this will kick us off and take it away.
I wanna sing, I'll bring my friends, we'll do our thing, dance together, young and old, everybody's story told. La 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 la. La 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 la. I wanna dance.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Dancing Heart Live. My name is Parker, and I am here with my mom, Maria. Hi, and my son-in-law, Tom Johnson.
La 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 la. La 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 la.
We have Vladimir Garrido Biagetti, who just took us off with that's our theme song, for those of you that just joined us. This is a perfection-free dance floor. You get to do it however you want.
Dance together, young and old. Everybody's story told. La 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 la.
Some of us have been meeting together over Zoom for the last year. One thing that we are learning in the research around dance is that dance and music, creating those patterns together, is a really great workout for our brain and our body. We have been creating community together here, so we're so glad that you are helping us create community. You're always welcome.
Thank you so much. So welcome to the Kairos Alive Dancing Heart Live. And we also have our Kairos Clubhouse, and that's all the same thing. It means it's a 45-minute participatory show that has been streaming on Zoom on and off since 2017. And sorry about that right there. And so my work, just want to do a little bit of background, is I am a person with disability myself. That means I have both cognitive and physical disability. And my work is always first in healing and understanding practice in my own life. And I just feel honored to share that in so many different spaces. My work as an educator has been in many communities, both with young people, older adults, and lots in intergenerational communities. In my 10-year plus tenure at Kairos Alive, with our 65 plus partners across the Midwest, state, country, and world, brings together folks through the transformative and international language of dance and music. And I know for some folks, that's not what comes to them first. It can be kind of scary, but what we're seeing is that it's really that creative connection, that way in which we're with each other, working with healthcare professionals, especially doctors. In Winona Health, I work at the VA Medical Center here in Minneapolis, in senior living communities, with individuals at homes. Is that idea that, well, what if your patient or your care partner or your caregiver was your dance partner? How would you be with them? And as you can see with our work on Zoom, it's continued to expand. The technology is not growing as fast as we are, and we continue through these COVID challenges to be, you saw my home studio, which I work actually with my family. So my mom, Maria Janae, is a longtime arts educator, and her work across the lifespan is based in what we do at Kairos. You saw my husband, Tom, and then my colleague, Vladimir Garrido Biagetti, and his home studio in St. Paul, my colleague, Linnea Dublett, in her home studio. And then we bring in other artist educators across the state and country. And the project that specific video comes from is an ongoing project with the Fox Valley area in Wisconsin. So that is Appleton and Oshkosh. And so close to Green Bay is where it first started. It's in connection with researchers. This was pre-COVID. Researchers out of Whitewater looking at the isolation of older adults and the effect of digital technology in our participatory Zoom space that Kairos creates. And it turns out that even just coming to one show really directly affects the health and well-being, not only of older adults, but of their care partners and their intergenerational community. We've used this broadband Zoom space to create service learning opportunities for young people as small as young students in elementary, middle school, working specifically with high schoolers. And then my work a lot has been in education. I also, outside of Kairos, work as a consultant, as an accessibility advocate, and also in accessibility work within the classroom with my trauma-informed practices in music and dance for all ability and intergenerational classrooms. And it's really using creative connection for creative solutions in both education and business and anywhere that people gather. And so we find that it's translatable to many spaces. I was really inspired by your talk, Adrienne, when you were talking about where to find stuff like this going on. You can join Kairos. Actually, every Thursday we have free shows that are across the country, and we have people that join us from senior day programs, disability day programs, individuals at homes of all ages, kids, other artists come on, and I'm going to just put in the chat some of my information here now. But what we find in the work that we do is that it is intergenerational, and our work right now with a pediatrician based in a small community outside of the cities here is that she's working with her patients who are on suicide watch. These are young people, both teenagers and young adults, and a lot of them identify as LGBTQIA+, and they are asking for embodied learning and healing spaces to creatively connect to themselves and each other. And so we have many partners, from pediatricians to, as I mentioned, Winona Health, work a lot in the VA, at the VA day programs, VA hospital, and senior living communities as well. Work a lot with Minnesota Orchestra, with community centers based around cultural identities. A long-term collaboration is with Centro Tyrone Guzman, doing our work both in English and in Spanish, as my colleague Vladimir is from Chile. And so anyways, so I just think we're about joy. And anyways, I have a brain injury and it's hitting right now. So anyways, any questions about Kairos or what we do? I mean, I think everyone, the technology is here. It's not being designed fast enough, and we know that there is not enough broadband access for folks, and access to that. It's something that we work against all the time. In most subsidized living situation, the broadband internet is something that they have to privately pay and cannot afford fast enough internet. So even the folks that are even most isolated, most need these kind of programs are the ones who don't have access to it. So we're always, yeah, go ahead, Bill.
Do you guys try and connect families to their own elders?
We do. We have family members that meet across the country, and especially during COVID, when especially older adults meet their young grandkids. We have friends that meet on this, and then friends that are made through this digital community. It's a way to really empower and foster relationships.
Great, thank you. And
yeah, any questions? Oh, and I wanted to just say, to add on to Adrienne, a great place to look for educational programs for across the lifespan are at state and regional arts boards. So here in Minneapolis, we have the Metropolitan Regional Arts Council, and there's arts councils in a lot of our small communities. I'm not exactly sure how it works in Illinois. And those are really great places to see who's getting funded and to really look for artist educators as leaders in this work. A lot of us have been in a lot of crisis as well as COVID has hit. A lot of our work has gone away and already was going away because of the lack of funding and funding cuts in aging and disability, education, and arts. And so, to look to both the regional and then state arts boards to see who they fund, who's on their roster, that's another really great place to look. And a lot of right now you can, have access to artist educators, across the country now because of broadband and Zoom. So just wanted to put that in as more resource as well. If you want to join us, this is my contact info. Would love to connect. And yeah, so any questions before I sign off here, or?
Thank you so much, Parker. I'm going to wrap up because Bill has had to get off to go to a community meeting in our Illinois Connected Communities program. But my name is Adrienne Furness. I'm the executive director of the Benton Institute. Parker, that video was just the perfect way to end a webinar. I actually got up and moved around a little bit because we've all been sitting. But I want to thank our speakers today, a very varied group of presenters talking about a variety of use topics. So thanks to Adrienne and Heather, Eric and Parker for giving us their time today. And I hope you all enjoyed it as much as I did. So get out there and move around. Parker, you got to send that music video around for everybody. That's just wonderful. And we'll look forward to seeing you all soon. Thanks again. Thanks to Nancy and Bill again for helping us organize these, and to the Illinois Office of Broadband, our collaborator in these webinars. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank
Take
you,
care.
Adrienne. Everybody have a great day today. You will receive a follow-up email with all of these wonderful presentations and materials. Thanks again for joining, and have a good day.
Take care, everybody. Bye-bye.